Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the ETS Travel Podcast. I'm John Cavara here with Bethany Barbary. We're ETS Business Development Managers, and we have another very exciting episode for you today of the podcast. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover a topic and something that we kind of have to explain a lot. Why use a travel advisor to book travel? Let's just talk about a little bit of how travel plays in with faith a little bit. So travel has always played a role in faith journeys. We see it countless times in the Bible. How many pilgrimages that the books of the Bible take us on, and from biblical pilgrimages to modern day ministry trips, possibilities are endless. Travel is a huge part everywhere in the Bible. So and also, for many believers, traveling together is more than just a movement. It's a formation. It's building fellowship. It's building a community together. So travel definitely is very important as it pertains to faith. And then just an idea I wanted to throw by you all, our valued listeners here. So when we lead others on a faith journey, we're entrusted with more than itineraries. We're entrusted with people. That's a very powerful idea there to ponder on there. So of course, like I said, today's conversation is going to explore why partnering with a travel advisor matters, especially when the journey is something as sacred as faith-based pilgrimage. Whether it's to Israel or one of the other various destinations that we offer. Why you as a travel advisor could play such a huge role in helping form that for your clients there. So Bethany, let's just cover the basics. I think a lot of our listeners by this time listening to us, and maybe we have some newer folks that are new. But what does faith-based travel include?
Yeah, definitely the most important part is the prayerful intention behind each destination. When we're crafting these itineraries, it's with the spirit of it being a pilgrimage, that this journey and the fellowship opportunities are going to change the person that gets to travel on it. So, when you're working with a travel advisor, it's great if they're in that same kind of mindset as you as the, group leader or the pastor. Having a whole team that's going to pray over this through the whole process and really understands the focus of that is so, so important. It's spiritual expectations, not just sightseeing. So, I recently returned from getting to go back to the Holy Land in January, and the amount of time we spent in prayer and devotions at the sites, and, people really taking time to read the scripture in the places, that's what makes it a pilgrimage and not just, a vacation. And that's so important. And that's really what we're striving to do, to make sure the programs are including moments and times for worship, singing together, that fellowship element, teaching, reading the word, reading the scriptures, and really helping connect it. That's always the thing that's so awesome about doing any kind of lands of the Bible journey, whether it be going through Greece or Turkey or Israel, is you come back and you read your Bible differently. So I'm working through the book of Acts right now with my son for our evening Bible study. And so being able to picture the disciples in the upper room, where they were waiting after Jesus's death and before he appeared again, and being able to visualize that and visualize them walking to the temple area and things like that, that I'm currently reading about. Like, I've got this wonderful visual picture in my head. So, it's really, really important to keep those in mind. And just the responsibility for emotional and spiritual well-being. Working with a travel advisor can make all the difference, because they can help keep the pastor or the group leader focused on the spiritual while they're taking care of, all of the tasks and the behind the scenes things, and dealing with maybe somebody that's upset, or, dealing with the emotional needs. Because there's a lot of spiritual needs for these programs, and there can be emotional needs too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, our journeys are really designed not to just show them places. It's not a vacation. It's not just so you can get your awesome pictures for Instagram. We really are striving to deepen your faith when you travel with us. So every detail can either support or distract from that purpose. So that's why working with someone that understands the intentions of your groups is so important. Because one little slip up and then another little thing happens, and it grows, like grains of sand making a whole mountain. So it's really, really important to make sure we're supporting and not distracting from that purpose, and the people you're working with do that.
Absolutely. And the men and women in ministry, they have a lot on their plate. There's a ton of weight that comes with leading a church, leading a congregation. The pastors, they have a ton of stuff that comes to them each day. That travel might be one of the last things on their mind. They just got day-to-day stuff and preparing, sometimes services 2-3 times a week. It can get pretty hectic for our friends in ministry there. And that's where you would really come in as a travel advisor, is to help shoulder that weight that they carry, be their expert, help them plan this stuff. And, really you can be a very instrumental part of making a successful travel ministry. And like I said, they have a ton on their shoulders day to day. So Bethany, how do you think, given that there's so much day to day stuff, so much tedious tasks that come with, running a church and being a pastor, how could they also be expected to know travel? I know some do, but for your average, pastor, that isn't familiar, how could you expect them to have that in mind as well?
I would say your average pastor, the idea of a faith-based journey has probably never entered their head whatsoever. They're so consumed with taking care of their church. I come from a family of pastors. Both my grandfathers were ministers. A bunch of my uncles were ministers. So I've seen many people in that senior pastor position, and every moment is spent taking care of the church. And when they're not in church and worrying over that, they still have their families and those kind of things. So the idea of I'm gonna sit down and book a trip and figure out logistics, and then I'm gonna create a brochure and put it up on the church website and post it out on social media and invite, the church to come with me. And then I'm going to sit and collect everybody's registrations and take their deposits and collect that all and send it off. And then remind people when a final payment's going to be due, and to send in their passport information. And, you need me to find you a roommate. So I've got to sit down and look at the list of people and, talk to them and try to match people up to room together that, aren't going to travel with their spouse or a family member. That's crazy to ask a pastor to do.
That's a lot of work.
Just all the pastors I've known, they're pretty darn busy. If they're not actively doing something for the church, they're visiting with someone in ill health, or going and visiting hospital, or, like I said, occasionally trying to spend time with their own, families and things like that. So their idea of booking travel is that rare time when they actually take a vacation or a sabbatical or something. And it's just, trying to kind of get away and refocused with family and things like that. So faith-based travel is a foreign concept to a lot of pastors. We estimate 5 to 10% of pastors in the U.S. maybe have done some kind of trip with their church, let alone go to the Holy Land or something like that. So it's super important, if you're a travel agent or travel advisor, that you express to these pastors that you're approaching that you want to lead a group, that you're going to take care of all of that for them. Oh, yeah. And that you understand that, it's a time commitment they don't have, and that you're going to do that for them. And, if you're talking to your pastor, Sometimes they're just going to say yes out of, obedience and love. Like, oh, of course you can promote a trip in the church. And, if you get people signed up, I'll go and things like that. So the more you encourage them about the difference it's going to make in the congregation and the fellowship and the connections that'll be built, you're going to get them so much more excited about that and really stressing, I'm going to deal with all the logistics. So I'm going to work with this company. They've been around for a long time. Hopefully it's us, ETS Tours. And, they're going to take care of all the logistics. I'm going to deal with all the stuff on the front end of getting people registering, getting their deposits, collecting passports, matching people up with roommates, all these little detail things. I'm going to take care of that for you, Pastor. So all you have to do is be the spiritual presence on the trip. Go and enjoy this fellowship opportunity with your congregation, lead them in devotions, and things like that in these holy sites and these holy places. And don't worry about the administrative burden, because that's what I'm going to do for you as a travel advisor. So, many leaders step into trip planning with a willing heart, but they soon find themselves carrying way more than they were meant to carry alone. So that's where you, as a travel advisor, you pick up that slack for them. You help take care of them and provide them with this awesome opportunity that, they work so hard at the church. This is an awesome way for you to give back as a travel advisor too.
Oh yeah, and just those lists of tasks that you were checking off there, the day-to-day stuff that goes into planning a trip like this. At the end of the day, a group is a group. You have a lot of different people that you're responsible for and have to keep track of, and piling that on with the other tasks that you mentioned pastors have day to day. I mean, goodness, it's a lot to ask, especially if it's a smaller church where they might not have somebody in their front office that can, work on, like graphic design stuff, like making a brochure. Like that's, last thing a lot of these churches want to deal with here. So, and another thing too, like Bethany alluded to, you're coming in as a travel advisor for more of an administrative role. The pastor always is going to be the center of attention. You're not going to take the spotlight. You're going to essentially assist them with your goal in mind that you want to help them get a group together, but let them lead and let them be the center of attention there. So you'd be taking more of a supporting role than an administrative role for sure. And like I said, a lot of churches don't have the manpower to do that, which is where a good travel advisor would come in. So a couple of key points here to talk about that. So prayerful planning. These trips are designed with intention, not haste. So there's obviously intention in everything, all the itineraries that we curate here, and also thoughtful pacing as well. Thoughtful pacing. We don't want to rush people, and we also want to be aware that there's only so much time in a day. And then, of course, probably the biggest point in a faith-based trip is time for built-in worship and reflection there. And it's really what makes these things very special, is having that time there. And then, of course, understanding sacred spaces, respect for the holy sites, things like that. Coordination for services, mass, devotionals. That's a lot for pastors to try to plan themselves. So that's where we work in partnership with our travel advisors to make these things possible. And then, of course, knowledge of religious customs and access requirements.
For instance, if a pastor just contacts an airline and books a set of group flights, and he contacts a hotel and is like, okay, I'm bringing 20 people with me. I need, 9 to 10 rooms here, and they book it all. And he gets them a transfer from the airport to the hotel, say they're in Jerusalem, and they're going to go walk out their first day because the pastors looked at Google Maps, and we're going to go to the Western Wall. And they get there and they get turned away because he didn't understand that, it's a Jewish holy site. So to be respectful, like, your shoulders or knees need to be covered.
Right.
And it's the middle of summer. They went in July. So, it's these little random details that they don't have time to research. So that's where, you as a travel advisor and us, we come in and provide that very valuable information to the pastor. Like, he doesn't even have to think about it or research anything because we've done all that. We're going to provide all the information to the guests and the pilgrims, and it's funny. They're things that, like, a lot of times, I'm sure if you're planning a family vacation, you don't necessarily stop and look at, like, hey, what are the rules in the country I'm visiting?
Right, right.
And sometimes they can have very funny rules and you'll get surprised by something, that's stuff pastors just don't have time to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's best to partner yourself with someone that has knowledge of that to ensure that, respect is fulfilled for sure. So also too, we have trusted partnerships on our tours, guides who teach scripture and context. They go over the historical aspects. They do a great job of, communicating what you're seeing. And also hotels that understand group ministry needs. That one I can't stress enough, especially in a destination like Israel. It's, you have the occasion where, there might be locals that are, on a getaway. Most of these hotels, especially in Jerusalem, they're seeing a lot of church groups.
And, when we're looking at hotels to use for our packages, we're looking for, obviously, do they have a lot of rooms? So can we accommodate large groups here if we have them? Do they have good dining facilities with choice? We try to include breakfast and dinner every day on most of our programs. So that's a very important aspect. And then a funny thing that you wouldn't necessarily think of if you're not used to booking group travel, but it's important. Can the bus pull up to the front of the hotel to unload the bags?
Yeah.
Like, you would be very surprised, but there are lots of hotels in Europe, especially in older cities. You go around certain places in Rome and stuff, and the old streets are very narrow. A bus can't get through there. So do we use that hotel or one that's newer and on one of the main streets that has space for the bus to pull up so that we can unload the bags so that people don't have to, like, drag their bags a mile to get to their hotel? Like, it's not great if you have older people or, it's not pleasant. You've paid all this money to go on a trip, right? You want to be taken care of. So, these are the funny little details that it's so important to look at and investigate, but, a pastor would not have time.
That definitely is
and it probably wouldn't have occurred to him.
That definitely is a very underrated point because I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
So that's a great point there. So we plan these things out with every detail in mind. Things like, bus parking even and stuff like that. So, and also another thing, advocacy and care, somebody watching over the journey behind the scenes, me and Bethany are always here to, help you throughout the process, but you have somebody from the whole time that you're working with ETS that is watching over your group with care and taking care of those details that you mentioned at first, passports, payments, stuff like that. You have somebody that helped through this whole thing. So
you being right there, visiting the church, meeting with the people face to face, because as much as we are continuing to grow and expand, we don't have people all across the U.S. that can just show up at a church. So, you being there and taking care of that stuff and meeting with the people and being in the same time zone if they call and you pick up, that is such an amazing resource for a group leader in a group that you can provide as a travel agent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and, 24-hour support as well. And travel plans change sometimes. Flight delays, especially this time of year, depending on when you're listening to this, in the winter months, can be pretty hectic as far as air travel is concerned. And on the ground, things change frequently due to delays and stuff like that. So having, somebody in your corner that can help with that, your average pastor isn't going to really know what to do when they come into, issues that would come up like that. So,
Yeah. So you being there, if you're not traveling with the group, that they can pick up the phone and call you and be like, hey, something's going on. And you can be like, okay, I'm going to refer you over to ETS. They've got a 24/7 emergency hotline. Let them know that your flight's been delayed. They're going to work with you and try to get stuff rescheduled. I found out recently, and I was very surprised, that more and more tour operators don't have emergency lines and that are 24/7. And if there is an air issue, a lot of times you're on your own. And that really surprised me. So, working with a travel advisor that's going to pick up and at least give you guidance, even if it's like, okay, we can't fix it because you've already used half your ticket. So you've got to go to, the check-in desk and have them reschedule you all. And here's a flight I found, and work with them, and just even being able to give them those instructions of what they can expect and letting them know, like, hey, we're in touch, so they know you're going to now come in a day later after your flight gets booked. So we're rearranging the touring to try to figure out some of the things you miss. Like, a pastor trying to do that on his own for a group, like that's not his job. That's literally not what he's been trained to do. Most people, when they travel, if they book their own travel, wouldn't necessarily know all of those steps and think of all of the things that they need to try to rebook or move around and all the people they need to call. So having a travel agent with a trusted tour operator that's doing all that in the background for you is such a huge value.
Oh yeah. It's creates peace of mind for pastors and travelers as well. It's like you said, something that we don't see everywhere in the industry. That level of care and attention there. So given all of this, your group leaders, they can focus on shepherding, and leading that group, and not focusing on logistics. It's definitely not their job, like you said, Bethany. So moving on here, question for you, Bethany: how can ministry leaders and travel advisors partner and help steward each other's resources there?
Absolutely. The number one thing is time management. Travel planning to stewardship, it's time management. A pastor, if you're going to say, I'm going to do all of this, I can commit this time to take care of this for you. So all you have to do is maybe make some announcements in the church, or let me run an ad in the bulletin, and let me have the time maybe within the church to do a presentation after a service or on a weeknight and invite people, and you don't have to do all this, pastor. I'll do it. It's that time. So much time goes into taking care of people, even if you're just signing them up for the trip. Forget the logistics and all that kind of stuff we do on our side. But time is a super valuable resource for pastors. And, resources. If you're a pastor and you have a smaller church and you're counting all the pennies because you guys are also trying to do a mission trip or start a daycare program, or you're investing in adding a school to the church, or you would like to expand and offer more, small group programming and those kind of things, you're counting every penny. So the extra resources to go out and print a bunch of brochures, or to, invest in things like that, or again, going back to the most important resource of all time, like the time to come up with a presentation to get people excited about going on a trip. It's like most pastors and churches just don't have this. Some are large and they've got a big staff, and so they could devote somebody to them. But, your average church just doesn't have those kind of resources. So you being a travel agent, partnering with us, we provide wonderful social media resources. We do brochure printing still, and creation and customization. And we're happy to help with other media things as well. So, and then the resource of people, again, going back, a lot of churches don't have spare people. Everybody is there with a purpose because they have a budget and they want to use their budget as wisely as possible, putting forth the mission of converting more people to Christianity and supporting their local community. So giving up a person's time within the church staff to do all these things that you could do for them as a travel advisor, like that's a big resource they're giving up. That person's time could be going to one of the other important church projects. So, when you're talking to a pastor, you're going to save them time. You're going to make sure resources and people are not being pulled away from the church and its mission.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when it is pulled away, what we see quite a bit here is, when logistics kind of fades into the background, right? When we're handling that, or, you as the agent are, working in tune with us to handle it, these conversations deepen, everything day to day, it becomes, there's just more, like you said, one of the most important resources is time. And there's just more time for, better conversations, also prayer becomes more natural as well. And teaching moments day to day, they unfold organically as well. And, one of my favorite parts is the group grows closer. Sorry, tongue twister there. But, people, the community, they grow closer together. And when there's not this huge burden of all of this on your shoulders or your group leader's shoulders, there's so much more time for that. When the details are cared for, the hearts are free to receive. So that's that's the one way I look at it there for sure.
Absolutely. And again, shout out to all the pastors and how much hard work they put into their church communities and those kind of things. So like I said, you as a travel advisor, you're giving them back so much by taking on the burden and doing all of the planning for them and taking care of them and letting them have one less thing to stress about in their lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So another question you may ask is, who benefits most from this kind of support? The answer is, the pastor obviously is going to benefit, but the church in a whole is going to benefit. Church is traveling internationally. If it's a first-time pilgrimage or first-time pilgrimage leader, this pastor in particular, they're going to benefit from this very highly of not having to deal with all of the day-to-day stuff. So also, multi-generational faith communities, a lot of these folks, they just want to, pick up and go and not have to worry about all this stuff. And then also, groups seeking meaning, not tourism. That's one thing that we, these are spiritual journeys. These aren't tourist, trips, although it's always nice to, snap a nice picture and, do all that, but at the end of the day, this is something that is more of a spiritual pilgrimage. So definitely those with that in mind benefit from this kind of support the most here. And a travel advisor doesn't replace the vision of the church and what they're looking to do. They help protect it. They help protect that time. They help protect, having to shield the church from the day-to-day stuff. So it's really, really cool piece of who benefits from this here. So, and then, so just to summarize today, we'll close out again. We always appreciate our listeners. We love you guys and appreciate, all the conversation that we have, and, we love doing this for you guys. So definitely let us know how we're doing. So, faith-based travel is a sacred work. And as we learned today, leaders don't have to do it alone. They could partner with you and in tune with us to make these things happen. So, always the right support allows the journey to unfold as intended, and help these things go right. So, when a journey is planned with care, covered in prayer, and guided with wisdom, it becomes more than travel. It becomes testimony. So we definitely want to encourage all of our listeners that are, travel advisors to seek guidance from us early on. We can help you come up with plans. We can help you, go over strategies to make a successful group and everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. We want you to have intention and peace about the process. So, you can pick up the phone, you can contact us, and we'll walk you through what you need to do for the pastor, what we're going to do to support you through all of that, what resources we have to help this be a successful program and for people to have these amazing faith journeys. So, just reach out. We're going to support you while you're supporting the pastors and the group leaders.
Absolutely. Very well said. So this, of course, closes out this episode of the ETS Travel Podcast. As always, we appreciate all of our valued listeners. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Give it a like, depending on what platform you're on. Give us your feedback. Let us know how we're doing. We love to hear that this is helping you out, or if there's any specific topics that you feel would help you in particular. We're always open to feedback, but definitely we appreciate all your support and partnership throughout the years. And until the next episode, may the Lord bless you. Have a great day.